This happened to me a few years ago, back in 2008 actually. A Native American friend and I went up to the Northwest Territories on a hunting trip. Just for a little bit of background, I live in Alberta and I'm in the Canadian Army, 3rd Canadian Division, so I'm a pretty good tracker. My friend, who I will just call Pan, because it's a shortened version of his surname and will make the story a lot easier. He is Algonquian, and he is also a good tracker, and he also lives in Alberta, but the difference is he was born on a reservation. His family had taught him all the legends and customs when he was growing up, but he handles modern society pretty well. Anyway, we drove for a long time. I wasn't really keeping track of how long, but it was more than just a few days. We were headed to a heavily forested region west of the Great Slave Lake. The pic on screen now, I believe that's the general area that this happened, but the picture is not actually my own. There were no government roads back there, so the drive was pretty rough. The snow was also really crap, but we were both used to it and loved cold weather anyway. When we had finally found a good spot to park, we got our things out of the bed of my truck and began our trudging through the snow to find a place to set up camp. We wanted to camp in a place a few kilometers from where we parked, to give us a bit of a challenge. Even though it was very heavy snow, the place was beautiful. The nature was completely untouched. I tried snapping a few shots with my phone, but none of the pictures came out good. It was disappointing, but at least the drive was worth it. After walking for about 3 hours, we came into a clearing in the trees and made the decision that it was where we would set up camp. I began setting up our 2-person tent, and Pan was clearing the snow off of the ground to prepare a fire pit. I had to set up the tent and our sleeping bags, and I helped Pan with the fire pit once I was done. Once that was done, I told him to follow me to find some firewood. He nodded, understanding that it was going to be dark out soon and that we desperately needed a fire. We both had hatchets along with us and began chopping branches off some of the pines close by to the camp. The wood was quite wet, so it was going to be difficult to get it dry for the campfire. We hid a good stack of thick branches and we carried them back to our camp. When we returned, there were tracks in the snow that were not ours. They seemed to be a kind of morphed human footprint. Pan and I gave each other some really strange looks because we had no idea what they were. We set our wood piles in the area that was cleared for a fire. I asked him if maybe someone else was camping nearby and got lost. Maybe their footprints intertwined with ours and smudged them up and made them look weird. Or, I don't know, maybe they just have weird shoes on. Pan just kinda shrugged when I asked him and told me he couldn't say for sure. He told me that no normal person would walk in the snow barefoot out here in the cold like this. That didn't even register in my mind at first. Yeah, these were barefoot prints. These were not made by any kind of shoes. We returned to our tent and took our rifles out of their carrier cases. We were now pretty alert, high alert really. I told Pan that we should probably get the fire going now before it's too late, because we probably only had about an hour left of sunlight. I headed up to the pit, set up some of the wood, covered it with some dry hay that I had brought for fire starting, and then I got to work on the flint. The fire died out pretty early, so we tossed our beers in a plastic bag and headed into the tent. I got in my sleeping bag, and I fell asleep pretty quickly. I was awoken late that night by the sound of snow crunching. I got out of my sleeping bag as silently as I could, but the movement seemed to alert whatever was outside making that noise, and the snow crunching just stopped. Dead silent. I shook Pan, who was right next to me, until he woke up. He knew that I would not have woken him up unless it was something very serious. I pointed to the tent door and grabbed my rifle. Pan grabbed his rifle as well. I practically tore the zipper down of the tent and snapped my rifle up as fast as I possibly could, stepping out of the tent slowly. Pan held a flashlight in one hand and his rifle in the other, pointing the light in all directions. There was nothing there, except more footprints, just like the ones we had found a little bit earlier. Something was definitely following us. That was the only answer that made any kind of sense. I told Pan that I would go outside and get a fire going, that I would take the risk. I told him to watch my back and not let go of that rifle for anything. Pan nodded and held his rifle with both hands. I got a fire going as quickly as I could and pulled my rifle from around my arm, and I sat close by to the fire. We sat there together until sunrise, feeling watched the entire time, our rifles gripped tightly. I was sweating, even though it was probably only around 5 degrees outside. When it was light enough, we made a quick breakfast and decided that we would track whatever was following us. For the next 4 hours, we were following a very faint trail. We could not be sure that what we were following was what made the tracks at camp, or if we were just following random wildlife. Regardless, we were eventually led to a carcass forced onto the branch of a tree. Basically, it was as if someone had torn a caribou in half and forced the second half onto a branch. It smelled awful and was partially frozen. It seemed like it had been there for at least a day or two. We continued following the trail, but the smell of death and decay never left. Somewhere along the walk, we had heard a very distant, but also very distinct shriek of some sort, like the sound a pig makes when it's being butchered while still alive. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I told Pan that we should turn and leave right now, that I had a terrible feeling. Pan asked me why. He told me bad spirits walk among us. I gave him a kind of a, "What the fuck are you talking about" look, and I was just like, "Are you sure?" He told me he did not want to stop until he knew what was out there. He said that we could easily shoot the damn thing and get rid of it. I told him his curiosity was going to get us killed, but I just sighed and let it go. I let Pan take point on the walk back. I did not recognize anything on the way back. Not even the dead caribou on the tree was still there. I asked Pan if we were lost, if he actually knew where we were going. He just stopped all of a sudden, turned to me and said, "I don't know." He sounded really annoyed, like he was getting frustrated. He told me that the trail just vanished only minutes after we turned back. I was pissed. "Why the fuck didn't you say anything, Pan?" "I didn't want to alarm you. I figured if we walked in the same direction that we came, we could still get back to camp, but even our own tracks were gone. There was nothing to follow." I told him that we needed to stop right now and figure out where in the hell we were before we made it worse and got even more lost. I took my backpack off of my back and opened it up, searching for my map and my compass. While I was busy in my backpack, I saw Pan scramble for his rifle from the corner of my eye. He brought it up and fired off 3 rounds. I looked at him, I looked around, and I said, "What happened?" I also brought up my rifle, just instinctively. I had to be ready. Something obviously set him off. I noticed that Pan's face was as white as the snow on the ground. He just said, "Wendigo." I was like, "What?" Pan didn't reply. He just began backing up, and he just called me forward with his hand, told me to back up too. I closed my backpack back up, put it on, and we both jogged through the trees. We had now been out there for close to 7 hours, and the sun was going to set soon. I took duct tape from my bag and secured a flashlight on the end of my rifle, and then I handed the tape to Pan for him to do the same. We were no longer jogging, but picking up the pace. We would not be able to track anything in the dark. We were feeling watched all the time and kept hearing branches snapping only meters away from us. Somehow though, we finally found our camp. By this time it was already dark. We packed up our things as quickly as we could and left all of the non-essential items behind. Our tent had been torn open, as well as our bags. It was very obvious that something was here. Right as we were about to leave, I shined my flashlight at the tree line that we had just come out of. What I saw made my animalistic instincts kick into hyperdrive. It looked so skinny that its bones were almost pushing out of its skin. The eyes appeared so sunken, almost black, and the bony fingers were jagged like twigs. It was just standing there, watching us, a viscous black fluid dripping from its mouth. I took a gasp for air and then I fired around. Then I cocked the rifle and then fired again and again. My hands were shaking really badly. I don't know if I was even aiming straight. Penn now had also begun firing. Once the smoke had settled, the thing was gone. I don't know if I even made contact with the thing. I don't even know if I hit the thing. Once we realized it was gone, we were just sprinting to find my truck. I wish we hadn't parked so far away in retrospect. We had no idea what our surroundings were, only what direction we were going in. Everything was dark except for the beams of our flashlights that were shaking back and forth since they were taped onto our rifles. I was so exhausted, and now I was running entirely off of adrenaline. We heard the screams again, but this time it just didn't stop. It just kept going, like a tape on a loop, and the screams, they were much closer to us. I turned while we were running and looked behind me, and I realized that Pan was nowhere to be seen. I was like, where the fuck is Pan? I stopped running. I knew the danger, but I wasn't going to leave my friend behind. I needed to figure out where he had gone. I shouted his name multiple times, but all I could hear in those woods were those inhuman screeches. I shined my flashlight at the trees, desperately looking for any sign of him. He was gone. Then I saw movement, a lot of movement. From what I could see, it didn't look like just one thing in the woodline hunting me anymore. It looked like multiple of those things, at least. That's what I remember in my brain. Maybe I could have been wrong. I did not want to leave Penn behind, but my brain screamed at me to just run. Whatever they were now only 3 meters behind me maybe, and my body just kind of turned and began sprinting on its own. At least, that's what it felt like. I now knew what it was like to be the gazelle chased by the lion. I felt nothing but fear. I have no idea how long I was running for, but at one point, I broke out of the trees and into the road. I was ecstatic and continued sprinting down the road until I spotted my truck. I tore my keys from the lanyard on my backpack, and as soon as I got to the door, I shoved the keys in and threw myself onto the seat. I locked the door, hoping it might do some good, and started the engine. The headlights went on, and there he was. Standing in front of the car was Penn. I screamed at him to get in the car. I didn't even stop to take a breath. I was like, get in the car. Where the fuck were you? What were you doing, man? I thought you were dead. Instead of running to the passenger door, Penn kind of twitched on the spot and stood there staring at me for a second. He didn't seem scared or urgent at all. And when I told him again to get in the damn car, he kind of floated towards the driver's door. That's the image I have in my memory. I never saw him actually lift his leg and move them. He just kind of inched forward, but he didn't move a single muscle. It was the freakiest thing I had ever seen. My friend doing something crazy like that. My instincts once again just kicked in, and I slammed the pedal. I was practically flying down the iciest roads you could imagine. I have no idea how I did not wreck and die. I did not slow down until I was back on the government road. I was almost crying the entire time. When I got to the nearest town, I told the police what happened. I left out the Wendigo part because I was scared that they would just dismiss my story as some kind of practical joke. I told them my friend's name, where we had camped. I left them my phone number and started my drive back to Alberta. I could not wait to get back home and away from all of that. They still haven't found him, not even a single trace. I have no idea when he disappeared. One second he was just running next to me. I was hearing his footsteps and his breathing, and the next second I turned and he was just gone. Hey, so I really wanted to share a story, One that I don't understand, would like to understand, but probably will never understand. I used to live in South Dakota, literally in the middle of nowhere. It was probably around 8 miles away to the nearest town. Milk was almost $5 a gallon, and I remember getting suspended from school for saying, "Oh my God," during recess. You know, that kind of town. This was in 1999, mind you. Anyways, I was in 5th or 6th grade when I lived there, and I spent a year or so in total isolation outside of anyone but my family, really. We had really shitty dial-up internet, so I spent my recreation time exploring the outlying swamps and fields. Most of our land was a swamp, so I spent my summer picking leeches off of my skin and seeing what was over the next hill, and just looking around all of the old buildings. I was really big into Pokemon and Star Fox 64 at the time, so I would run around the property pretending to be Fox or Ash. You have to realize, I had literally miles of forgotten land to explore, full of broken down farming equipment and ponds. One even that was deep enough to be a lake, but not quite wide enough, if that makes sense. But I digress. This story is about what looked to be a chicken coop, reinforced like a house in a really run-down shitty neighborhood. One of the first things that my parents noted about this farm was the smell. We blamed it on the swamp because it did stink, but this was different. The swamp had an earthy, sour smell. This was either metallic or coppery almost, like that taste you get after a nosebleed and you get the blood in your mouth. After getting settled in, we started snooping around. My dad took over the garage as his own, and we found a dead cat. My brother and I found a dead skunk in some kind of farming equipment, but it was within this first week and a half or so we checked more into this locked up building that, now that I look back on it, had no reason to exist at all. It was just randomly there, like this outdoor storage area. It was locked up really tightly. There was chicken wire in the glass windows and metal bars in front of that. The wooden door had a padlock, and oddly, that was it. My dad has messed with it before, of course, but made no real effort to get in there. It was after a few days, when we narrowed down when that coppery smell was coming from, that we made the effort to break in. At first, I assumed maybe it was a small makeshift slaughter room, but after prying the lock off of the door, all we found was a pit. The smell was overwhelming, decay and blood. It made me feel sick, and we had not even walked into the room yet. I have no idea what this farm was used for before we moved in. I knew that there was a fairly large chicken coop, this odd room, a garage, and the house. Was it supposed to be an outhouse, or a place to dump something gross? Something was really wrong there, but that is when the weird stuff started to happen. We closed the door, but we did not lock it. Soon after, my sister woke us all up, freaking out one night. She had to have been about 9 years old at the time. We had one of those houses where you can open up your window and sit outside on the roof. I'm not sure how to describe it. This freaked me and my brother out, saying something woke her up trying to open up her window. The disturbing part is, you could see the grease on the window. You could see where someone had touched it. My parents freaked the hell out, and things only got worse from there. We had 2 dogs. They went apeshit one night, so my dad called them in. Only one came inside. My brother's dog just vanished. My brother found the screen to his window all scratched up one morning. I would go out exploring, and I swear to you guys that those fields of cattails did not move quite right at times. There was something there. I could go on all night, but I feel like this is too long already. Anyways, after a few more months of torment, we moved back to Montana. It was after my sister mostly, and my dad got messed with one night. Nobody was ever hurt, I think, but I think it was building up to hurting one of us though. Anyways, here is why I even made the topic. That hole that smelled like a slaughterhouse. What was it, and what came out of it? I can elaborate on any details if you guys want. I could even Google map it and show you the shack. It's messed up. Someone said something about the Goatman, and I admit, I do not know much about it. But if something wanted to get in, it could have pretty easily have done so. This was during the summer, so we would all sleep with the windows open. My dad had set up shop in the garage, and some nights our dogs would just not shut up. They would just bark and growl at nothing, in no general direction, and then suddenly just stop or start trying to get their chains off and get into the garage with my dad. He would hear something crawling on the roof and fogging up the glass or just tapping on it, slamming on the sides. One night he was done and was getting ready to head back to the house, but he could not get the door open. There was something putting its weight on it against it from the outside. It was really weird seeing my dad come back in looking scared. I've seen him furious, sad, euphoric, drunk, but never ever scared. After that, he started carrying his gun around with him whenever he went out at night. Never during the day. He was worried that he would get jumpy and shoot one of us playing in the swamp or something. Eventually, we called the police after my mom was attacked. At this point, it was mostly, something really weird is going on here, but I'm a rational person, and I don't believe that monsters are real. It could have been neighbors' kids walking for miles just to prank the new people in town. Unlikely, but possible. Then again, life was pretty dull there before all of this started happening. So anyways, my brother and I got home from school one day and saw that our dad was home. This was odd because he was supposed to be at work. Our mom was visibly shaken and my dad was really stressed out because someone had tried to break into the house. It started off as just thumping, knocking on windows, throwing rocks at the front door. When she went outside and said that she was calling the police, it got violent. He was trying to bash his way in, she said, but the door was not even locked. None of our doors were ever locked during the day. So the police or the sheriff or whatever had showed up and waited for my dad, and she showed the hole and they really looked around the property. He did not do shit. My dad said the officer said he didn't even seem like he cared. That very night, I was in bed, reading like I always do before passing out. It was just dead silent. Everyone is just in bed. And then suddenly, I think I just heard something slam into my window. How that window did not shatter right then and there from that impact, I have no idea. But it jarred me to the point that I just ran blindly out of my room and into my parents' room. My dad went outside and made a big show. He fired off his gun, so they knew that he meant business, and then there was just silence. Then he fired more gunshots. He saw something and was now trying to kill this thing. This was when things started to really disturb me, and things settled in as, oh shit, this is real. See, my bedroom window was up on the second floor. It's like a 30-foot drop. There was a tree, but the branches were much too thin to support anything heavier than maybe a bird or a cat. Believe me, I've tried to crawl out of my window into the tree within the first week of moving in, because that would have been badass, but the branch gave out, and I was lucky I was not all the way on it. Anyways, there was no way anything could have climbed up there. Could it have been a bird or a bat that hit my window? Could be, but birds are normally nested that time of night, and bats are pretty small. The way my window shook, it felt heavy. 1 week before this, I probably would have just jumped, and maybe almost have a heart attack, but shrug it off, because we are all on edge. So my dad gets back inside, and said he chased it away into the swamp, and then it started making animal noises, like just at the edge of the cattails, and those fuckers get tall and thick. So, my dad did what any American would do in this situation and just shot blindly into the brush. He said he could hear the noises move around, but he never heard the rustling of the bushes. Was there more than one? Can it move that quietly? I have no idea. The animal noises were mostly like pig grunts. That's how he described it, but more of a croak, if that makes sense. Well, scratch that. None of this makes sense, but you understand what I mean. When I tell other people about this story, I get all kinds of looks, or just a in response, and I can tell that they think I am full of shit, so I just kinda keep it to myself. I mean, wouldn't you, after seeing that same look every single time? Anyways, that night, the copper smell would just not go away. It felt like it was getting stronger, like the stench was actively seeping out of somewhere. Normally, we just kept away from that area, and unless the wind picked up, we did not notice it too much, but that night, it was just in there with us. After that, things went down a notch. The banging stopped, our dog seemed to relax again, but the smell was getting worse, and its presence was more subtle. It was around fall, and my parents had decided to stay just for a little while longer. My dad argued that him shooting at who or whatever it was scared it off, but it was shit my brother and I started to notice around the property, because as I said before, we would explore it all the time. And with things settling down around the house, we started going outside again. First, it was the water. It used to be pretty clear in some areas, but now it was all reddish brown and shitty looking. Then there was the lack of wildlife. Sure, it was turning fall, but there were no frogs or little fish or even ducks. It could have been the changing season, who knows. Then it was the weird little carvings that we'd find on some of the trees. Simple stuff, like a circle with a square in the middle and a slash through it. I don't recall any of the other carvings so well. We did lock the shack thing back up after fixing the hinges, but whatever was out there either did not need it or had a way of getting in and out, even while it was locked. Maybe it was only dormant because nobody was living there. After things got weird, we did keep the house locked up pretty well. I don't think it was even trying to get in at first, just screwing with us for some reason. I will ask my mom about that house tomorrow and see if I can pull up some Google Maps for you guys. Okay, so I was on owned land by Forestville State Park, a park that started as a town in the 1800s until a great fire killed many people. I was camping with my bro on the land. Night is coming, so I rushed to get some firewood. I had been hearing strange sounds all night long, but I think nothing of it. I start a fire, I smoke a bowl, and talk about the coyotes across the river that were howling incessantly. We are about to go to bed when all of a sudden, we both hear a large yelping noise and all of the coyote noises just stop. We just kinda shrug it off, go into our tents, and start sleeping. I fall asleep rather quickly, and so does my friend. I have a weird dream of little old women wearing moss. I wake up to my friend screaming. I look over at him and see an old moss-covered hand gripping him and pulling him out of the tent. I start screaming and I reach for my gun. The hand lets go and I chase after it. As soon as I get out of the tent, I feel as if there is eyes all around me. I yell at my friend that it's time to cross the river and get back into our car. We both run as quickly as we can. We make it to the car that was facing our campsite and turn on the radio. We talk for a second before looking at the dead campfire across the river. That campfire was not dead anymore. It was lit up now, but it was dead when we walked in. I could even see a couple of figures, probably around 4 feet tall, talking and walking around the campfire. While we were watching, the fire just spurts up all of a sudden, like when fuel is doused on a flame and it jumps into the air. It must have gone up to around 17 feet. I turned on the car lights. All of those things, those 4-foot creatures, they were all women, it looked like, and they were staring at me. I backed up all the way down the Minmate Road in reverse, and made it to a nearby camp group, and I spent the night there. I was about to go to sleep. I was looking up at the hill, and I see a person-like thing 1 mile away. I said my prayer that night. I don't know what I saw, but shit guys, I will never go camping in that area ever again.